We are at the National Conservatism Conference. I am sitting with the guy who set this whole thing up, Yoram Hazony, who is the author of The Virtue of Nationalism and really had the idea for the National Conservatism Conference in the first place. Yoram, you just gave your big speech. I was stuck out here doing interviews like a sucker, but I sense you brought some new ideas to the table.
New ideas. I was specifically talking about what you, Dave, can do for the.
You were talking about me?
Of the United States of America.
Yeah? What can I do for the United States of America?
A little bit. I was talking about fusionism and defusionism. Now, probably most of your audience doesn't know this fusionism thing. It's like inside think tank jargon lingo. What it means is that in the 1960s, in order to defeat the communists abroad and the socialists at home, Buckley created what we today call the conservative movement. But the way it was created was it was an alliance of basically libertarians, liberal, free market people whose basic thought is freedom is all you need. Mm-hmm. I'm exaggerating a little, but not much. And that was an alliance with traditionalists, with conservative people who say, look, this is not going to work without God and Scripture, the traditional family, the inheritance, which is mostly Christian, of the United States, the American people. And that alliance, that fusion, the way it fused was, it was a public liberalism, meaning the public sphere would be freedom, 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 mm-hmm. on almost every issue. And in private, people would be traditionalists. They'd believe in God, they'd educate their kids. So, look, it had some...
And that worked for quite some time, basically.
It had some big achievements. That fusionism is what defeated the Soviet Union. That fusionism is what rolled back socialism in America and Britain and elsewhere. And so it was successful. But it didn't work on other fronts. The key fronts that it didn't work on was everything having to do with tradition. Everything. First it was privatized, and then it was eliminated. Meaning it was you take the public Christianity, you say, look, now it's going to be private Christianity. The federal government won't be Christian, then the states won't be Christian, then the schools won't be Christian. In the end, and then there's no Christianity. Same thing with Judaism, but Christianity is the big story here in America. In the end, you just don't. It's liberalism all the way down, and you're raising kids who all they believe in is freedom. And look, freedom is a great thing. I really don't want to be, objecting to great American traditions like freedom of speech. That it's important. But up until after World War II, our freedoms in America and in other Western countries, they were built on top of mm-hmm. a Christian traditionalism which allowed this to happen. So now the question is, what do we do?
Right, so as I mentioned in my opening remarks yesterday, really it's Jordan Peterson, Dennis Prager, and you that really turned me on this, that I thought for a long time that freedom in and of itself, that true liberalism in and of itself would be enough to be sustained. And yet here we are at the moment where 2 + 2 = 5, 3.5 trillion equals 0, males or females, nothing is really working. How do you think we how do you think you take the message that changed me, let's say, and get that to the masses so that the average person that's more libertarian-minded or totally secular or not religious in any way, maybe not even a believer, is like, actually we do kind of need some of that stuff?
Well, I think unfortunately, or fortunately, depending on how you look at it, America is in deep crisis. Again, rising China in 2020, we got to, the mask came off and we got to see what China really wants. 2020, we got to see probably most of the old liberal institutions in America, the liberal media, the liberal universities, the liberal business. We got to see almost all of them collapse and come under the thumb of this neo-Marxism. And this is, it's shocking to see it, but this is what conservatives, have been saying for decades: is liberalism isn't enough, because if all you give people is freedom, well, then they'll do every crazy thing. You can't, like, you can't just give them nothing but freedom from the time that they're little kids as a value, as the only value that really matters, and then expect that they're not going to. So they use their freedom. They use their freedom to become neo-Marxists.
So would you say it would be enough then to just revert back to what our founders wanted? I mean, we have freedom of religion here, but they all did believe in some sort of God and God-given rights. Obviously, is that enough, or is there a failing in those documents?
Look, there's a split among the founders, which makes the discussion more complicated, but also more interesting. The founders, we have the Declaration of Independence, which is kind of a Jeffersonian view. Life, liberty, and property is what we need. And then, after 10 years of really kind of disaster, economically, militarily, the American Revolution was won by people who were writing checks. Private people were writing checks to pay to move armies because there was no government that could do it. And the party that came out of that, the party that wrote the Constitution, so that's what later became the Federalists. That's Washington, John Jay, Hamilton, a guy named Gouverneur Morris, who was the most influential writer of the Constitution. They were much, much, much more conservative. They were nationalists. They were Christian, and they were not Jeffersonian in this sense of thinking all we need is freedom. Jefferson was very far in that direction. The Federalist Party, which wrote the Constitution, were much more conservative, and they certainly didn't think all you need is freedom. John Adams, all of these are people who said, if we do without traditions, without the common law, without the heritage of England, freedom is going to destroy us. Right, so that's the Federalist Party. That's the founding that I want to see revived.
Do you see any, not disconnect, or there's something sort of funny, I suppose, or odd or curious about an Orthodox Jew living in Jerusalem, a yarmulke-wearing Orthodox Jew who, how many kids do you have? 9. There's like 20 of you running around this place right now, that you are trying to help spearhead a movement to revive Christianity in America. Seems, I think someone might look at it at face value and go, what's going on here? This doesn't make sense. I sense you don't see it that way.
No, I kind of see it that way. I mean, look, up until 2015, 2016, up until Brexit and Trump, I mean, my biography was, my wife and I moved to Israel, and we're Orthodox Jews, and we thought that was the place to make our stand. And we worked on Jews and Judaism in Israel. That's what we did that's what I did for most of my adult life, my wife and I. And for me personally, there was a big change in 2016 when it started to look to me like Israel was in pretty good shape compared to America and Europe. That was a big change. Up until then, I always thought that Israel is on the verge of something terrible happening, and it was true for a long time. Suddenly Israel was in really good shape, in much better shape than America or Europe. And people, friends of mine from America, started reaching out. They said, look, we need help. Like, you've been talking about Israeli nationalism and Israeli Judaism for decades. Is there anything you can say to us? And it turns out that people wanted me to say things. I mean, look, I'm an American citizen, so I don't have some kind of like problem. Like, why are you here in America? I spent a lot of time in America, but the main thing is that I felt that American and British and European conservatives were turning to me and saying, we need to hear some of what you have to say. We need to hear more about the Bible. We need to understand how do Jews survive these things? How is it that Jews have survived without civil war for so long? There's all of these very interesting and innocent questions that Christian friends and Jews who are Americans started asking me, and I got a call. I literally got a call from a Jewish professor in 2016 who said, Yoram, just put everything aside you've been doing and write a book on nationalism for the Americans and the Brits and the Europeans, just tell them what you've learned as a Jew about nationalism. So I did that. I wrote the book, which was that was my first book that was not geared to Jews. It was a book that was geared to the general audience, and had great traction. And the Trump White House was really interested. It's been published so far in 10 European languages.
Wow.
So I got drawn to the front by friends who said, come on, we need you. And I really felt like, look, even if from a narrow Israeli perspective, if America's going down, we're in bad shape. It's not like we can just, pretend America, Britain, what difference does it make?
Yeah.
So the last 5-6 years, I've gone where people wanted me. And my writing and my speaking, my next book is a book called Conservatism: A Rediscovery. And these are books which are intended. You could, obviously, I don't hide the fact that I'm Jewish. Everybody knows. I mean, that's actually the fact that I'm an Orthodox Jew is part of what makes people curious and want to read what I have to say. But I'm writing now for a general audience, and I'm really doing everything I can to shore up, what's left of the ability of America and other democracies to resist this neo-Marxism. And like I said, the old fusion, which is based on public liberalism and private Christianity or private Judaism, that's finished. Because that's what brought us here. It had good things about it, but that's what brought us to this catastrophe.
It's a reluctant conclusion for a guy like me, but it is the conclusion nonetheless.
It is. Look, you and I, the first time we spoke a few years ago, you asked me, is there a place for a guy like me in what you're doing? And I told you, look, seriously, we need allies. We need an alliance. We can't, we can't just like each one bunkers into, the way he thinks the world should be if it were perfect. So today, in my speech, I rolled out a proposal. I still don't know what people are going to think of it, but I'll tell you what the proposal is. Here's the proposal. Okay, the proposal is, I said, look, Jews are 2% of the population in America, and in most democracies, there's like more or less, 1, 2, 3%, tiny minority are Jews. And I just think the public culture used to be Christian. It used to be moral. There used to be Bible study. There used to be prayer in schools. And America was stable. Not everybody participated, but there was a Christian public culture up until World War II. And America was a stable country, was a strong country, was able to defeat hardships from all directions. And I think it was a wrong turn. I mean, well-intentioned, I understand the intentions, but I think a wrong turn was taken when Christianity was kicked out of the public sphere, government, schools, now all aspects of life. And I think our alliance, I mean, this is my proposal, I don't know what you think, but I think our alliance is going to have to be something like this, that I'm a Jew, Jews are 2% of the US population, Jews need a carve out, they need, it's true, we don't accept the New Testament, we don't accept Jesus, we have good reasons for that, but we also want the country to do well. And it's a mostly Christian country. And I don't think Jews need for the public culture to be neutral between Christians and Jews and atheists. We don't need that. What do we need? We need to be able to have Jewish communities to not be persecuted, to not be molested, to not be forced to do Christian things. But that doesn't mean there can't be Christianity, let's say in the public schools. As long as Jews are exempted, they're allowed to leave the room for conscience, or maybe they'll even be like an alternative. They'll teach Judaism like they used to do that in America. So I don't think Jews, as 2% of the population, need to reconstruct the country, the public life of the country, so that it's not Christian. And that's my proposal also for gays and for other minorities. That's my proposal, is we need to figure out, like, is there a deal where private and communal needs are carved out and are allowed and legitimized and accepted, by everyone, And on the other hand, the public culture, we understand it's going to be a Christian public culture. Then there's a big negotiation over, all the details. But first, is that even tolerable? So that's the question. That's what I just said in there. Is I think that's the only way forward. And the question is, will we do it? I don't know.
I look forward to building it with you. All right. If you're looking for more honest and thoughtful conversations about politics instead of nonstop yelling, check out our politics playlist. And if you want to watch full interviews on a variety of topics, watch our full episode playlist all right over here. And to get notified of all future videos, be sure to subscribe and click the notification bell.